The Galactic Academy's final examination hall buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 17 different species hunched over their quantum tablets, frantically calculating hyperspace trajectories and stellar navigation protocols. The air recyclers worked overtime, filtering out the various pheromones of anxiety that each species produced, from the sulfurous emissions of the Korthax to the sweet vanilla scent that Zephyrians released when stressed. In the third row, completely oblivious to the olfactory chaos around her, sat Sarah Chen. The human exchange student had her feet propped up on the desk, one hand supporting her chin, while the other lazily tapped answers onto her tablet. To the untrained eye, she appeared almost bored, a stark contrast to the six-armed Hectonian beside her, whose multiple appendages moved in frantic synchronization as he cross-referenced his calculations. Professor Vexthal, a distinguished member of the crystalline Shardhai race, monitored the examination from his elevated platform. His prismatic body caught and refracted the room's lighting into dancing rainbows as he observed each student's progress. Like many of his colleagues, he found humans perplexing. Their admission to the Academy 3 years ago had caused significant controversy. How could a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel possibly compete with civilizations that had been traversing the stars for millennia? Yet here was Sarah Chen, consistently ranking in the top percentile of every class, solving complex problems with an ease that bordered on the supernatural. The professors had initially suspected cheating, but extensive monitoring had revealed nothing more suspicious than her tendency to finish exams in half the allotted time and spend the remainder doodling in the margins. The tranquility of the examination was shattered when the building's structural integrity alarms began wailing. Emergency lighting bathed the hall in ominous red as the floor beneath them trembled. Through the reinforced windows, Professor Vexthal glimpsed something that made his crystalline structure dim with terror: a void leviathan, one of the dreaded spaceborne predators that haunted the dark reaches between stars. The creature defied easy description. Roughly the size of a small moon, its amorphous body constantly shifted between dimensions, making it impossible to look at directly without experiencing severe disorientation. Tentacles that seemed to be made of pure darkness lashed out from its form, each one capable of crushing starships like insects. Most terrifying of all were its eyes, if they could be called eyes, burning voids that seemed to peer directly into one's soul. Panic erupted throughout the examination hall. The Zephyrians immediately began their traditional death songs, their melodious voices rising in harmonious despair. The Korthax released thick clouds of defensive toxins, while the more fragile species dove under their desks. Even Professor Vexthal, despite his advanced age and numerous encounters with cosmic horrors, felt his consciousness fragmenting in the presence of such primordial terror. Only Sarah remained unchanged. She glanced up from her exam, raised a single eyebrow at the reality-warping monstrosity pressing its bulk against the Academy's shields, and then, impossibly, yawned. "Seriously," she muttered, her voice carrying clearly through the chaos. "I've got 3 more questions to finish." The Void Leviathan's assault intensified. Its tentacles phased through the Academy's outer defenses as if they were mere suggestions, reaching toward the examination hall with predatory intent. Reality bent and twisted around the creature's form, causing several students to lose consciousness from the sheer cognitive strain of perceiving it. Sarah sighed and set down her stylus. "Fine, I guess I'll deal with this." She stood up, stretched languidly, and walked toward the windows. The other students watched in horror and disbelief as the human approached the cosmic nightmare, without so much as a tremor in her step. When she reached the reinforced transparasteel, she pressed one hand against its surface and looked directly at the Void Leviathan. What happened next would be debated in xenopsychology classes for generations. Sarah made eye contact, if such a term could be applied, with the creature. For a moment that lasted either microseconds or eons, human and cosmic horror regarded each other across the void. The Leviathan's reality-bending presence pressed against Sarah's mind. Expecting to find the usual terror, madness, or submission that marked its encounters with sentient life, Instead, it found something else entirely. A mind that had evolved, on a world where survival meant facing down saber-toothed predators, where ancestors had stared into the abyss of existence and decided to build civilization anyway. A species that had looked at the hostile vastness of space and declared it their manifest destiny. A consciousness shaped by countless generations of persistence hunters who had literally run their prey to death across endless miles. The void. Leviathan encountered not fear, but the quiet confidence of a species that had clawed its way to the stars through sheer bloody-minded stubbornness. Sarah smiled. Not the expression of joy or amusement, but the predatory grin that her ancestors had worn when they found fresh tracks in the snow. The Leviathan, a creature that had terrorized the galaxy for eons, suddenly found itself reassessing the tactical situation. "Look," Sarah said conversationally, her voice somehow carrying across the vacuum of space. "I've been preparing for this exam for 3 months. I've got a perfect GPA to maintain, and after graduation, I'm planning to join the Terran Deep Space Exploration Corps. So you can either move along and find someone else to bother, or we can do this the hard way." The Void Leviathan's massive form shuddered. Somewhere in its alien consciousness, primal instincts that predated the birth of stars were screaming warnings. This wasn't prey. This was something else entirely. Something that looked at the impossible and saw merely an inconvenience to be overcome. Slowly, almost respectfully, the creature began to withdraw. Its dimensional form started to fade as it retreated into the spaces between space, its tentacles retracting from the Academy's shields. Within moments, the cosmic horror that had terrorized countless civilizations simply left. Sarah returned to her desk as the emergency lighting flickered back to normal. She picked up her stylus, glanced at the 3 remaining questions, and resumed her work. Around her, 24 of the galaxy's brightest minds sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. Professor Vexthal's prismatic form flickered uncertainly as he attempted to restore order to his examination hall. Students gradually emerged from their hiding places, their various forms of panic slowly subsiding. The Zephyrians' death songs turned into confused warbles while the Korthax began cautiously reabsorbing their toxic emissions. Sarah finished her exam 17 minutes before the scheduled end time. She stood up, submitted her tablet to the collection point, and walked toward the exit. As she passed Professor Vexthal's platform, she paused. "Professor," she said casually, "you might want to add a question about Void Leviathan encounters to next semester's curriculum. Most species seem underprepared for that kind of situation." She left the examination hall whistling a tune that had once accompanied her ancestors on mammoth hunts, leaving behind a room full of some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations with a new and profound understanding of why humanity had earned their place among the stars. The exam results were posted the following week. Sarah Chen scored a perfect 100% as usual. More significantly, applications for the Academy's exchange program with Terra increased by 847% over the next month, as species across the galaxy suddenly developed an intense interest in understanding exactly what kind of minds had emerged from the 3rd planet of an unremarkable yellow star. In the depths of space, the Void Leviathan told others of its kind about the creature it had encountered, the one that had looked at cosmic horror and found it merely annoying. The message spread through dimensions where such beings communicated, carried by thought and terror and grudging respect. And on Terra, humanity continued its steady, implacable march toward the stars, blissfully unaware that they had just added another chapter to the growing legend of why the galaxy had learned to give humans a very wide berth when they were trying to get things done.